Titterpigs, oh yeah. They're gonna talk about sweet, sweet RPGs. And it's the Titterpigs, the RPG podcast. Am I getting paid for this one?
All right, listeners, welcome back to another episode of Titterpigs. This is episode 37. While it feels like it's episode 73, it's really only 37. Scott,
yeah,
we're back in the studio once again. We're kind of slow rolling, trickling out this year.
Yep.
I kind of feel bad.
I mean, I do too. I mean, like all things, this is not our full-time job, so we do it when we can, and as we said many times before on many episodes, life does get in the way, but when we do come back, we come back with good stuff and a good episode, and that's something I'm really looking forward to presenting with this one in our main segment. But we'll get to that in just a sec. But why don't we just start off like what's new with us? What have we been up to? And maybe we have also another little announcement we can talk about.
Wow, what's new? Well, I don't want to get into too much because we're gonna talk about some stuff in another segment in this episode. However, I took my granddaughter to her first game convention this past weekend, and that was amazing. So I had a blast. She had a blast. It was a little kind of free to do at a library about 2 hours away from the house, and it was fantastic. And she had a blast. We played a role playing game. Played a couple of board games. She did some VR stuff. They had like a teen room in the library where it's like a makerspace. Yeah. That included some two VR computers, and she was, I don't know, head over heels into the VR thing. It was great. Oh,
that's excellent. In a couple of years, you'll be driving cross country, taking her to Gamehole Con and Gary Con and Gen Con, and you pretty much have created a monster. Yeah.
Gen Con in 2 years.
Okay.
Well, I told her in 2 years when I go back, I will take her to Gen Con.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I remember taking my son and his friends to their very first con at Strategicon, and it is a cool moment to kind of see that, ooh, this is neat. I didn't know there's so many people who are like us, Dad, and who enjoy this stuff. And Dad, what's that smell? So yeah, hopefully, but yours was at a library, so I would assume there was probably better hygiene there than at a normal con.
Yes and no, but it was the crowd was very small. There was like 50, 60 people. It was very small, very low key.
Yeah.
But a really nicely done event, and I have nothing but good things to say. So,
okay.
What have you been up to?
Oh, hell, not a heck of a lot. I mean, I'm the one who's kind of probably been the biggest catalyst for getting behind. Just, personal stuff, kids dealing with school, dealing with everyday life and work. Wife's a teacher, so everything's kind of rolling into the end of the year. And kind of a non-gaming announcement, but and I know they don't listen to it, so I'm not afraid to say it. But after just a little bit over 3 months, my in-laws, who have been staying with us since the Christmas holiday, finally went home.
Oh, wait, is that the thing that you couldn't say the last 2 or 4, 5 or 6 episodes?
Yes, not because I didn't want it recorded, but because they were literally 15 feet away from me downstairs and they could have heard it. So with that... That might be the the Rolling Stone heading downhill that allows us to record more often because to be fair, you can record with them here, but there's a little bit of just kind of background noise, and also I get loud sometimes, and the couple times that I did try to record while they were here, I would get a "Scott, everything okay?" and just like, oh, fuck, so it's just not worth it. But that hopefully is behind us, and hopefully won't be venturing back into again. So, but that's nice. It allows
always remember family first.
Yes.
So
yes, family first. But as long as they kind of stop faking their illness and move on. But anywho. So yeah.
So hey, question.
Yes.
How has so in the last episode we had made mention that. For our Patreon supporters.
Yeah.
that we had a poll going on, and there was two things in the poll. City of Mist starter set and Troubleshooters, or The Troubleshooters role-playing game, and patrons could vote for one or the other.
Yep.
And what was, I know we're closing the poll. As of this episode, we're closing the poll. So what was the winner of that?
The winner is, drumroll please, if we can be bothered to edit it in, but probably not, Troubleshooters. So Yay! So we are going to be picking up and reading and doing a dive into Troubleshooters, which is a fantastic game. I had the honor of having one of the, I think it was either one of the creators or one of the publishers promoting it, run a game on a stream many years back. It's a lot of fun. I backed the Kickstarter and everything in it, and unfortunately really haven't done much with it since then. So it's going to be almost like, brand new. And I'm looking forward to it because it seems like it's going to be an enjoyable book. But we're doing a deep dive, so we may, I'm not saying my opinion will change, but I'll be interested in hearing your opinion and also, seeing how things go as we discover the
That's fair, because I know very little about it. I didn't back the Kickstarter. Yeah. I haven't read any of the comic source material, which we'll get into down the road in other episodes, and then some of it will be patron only content. Yeah. As we've mentioned in previous episodes, but we'll deep dive into it. We'll do some reviewing, and then we're going to run a game, and we'll record that for those that like actual plays. You'll be able to listen to it. If you don't like actual plays, you can just ignore it. Yep. Whatever your preference happens to be. But since this was the game that I put into the poll, I'll be the schmuck running it. So, hey, we'll see how this one goes.
Well, it doesn't seem like it'll be too hard. So looking
I don't think so.
That.
I've already started reading it. I have not read it previously, so I'm starting to read it, and I'm already super excited about it. So yeah. I love what they're doing with the material and the way it's presented. I have some questions, but that's for a whole nother episode. So we're going to leave it at that. But that was the winner, so that's cool. I'm super excited. So we'll see how that goes in the very near future.
Yeah. Speaking of excited, I haven't been this excited about our main segment in a long time, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. And it was enlightening too. I learned a lot. So before we roll into it, Keith, what is our main segment going to be about?
That was so it's really hard to define. I mean, it's an exciting topic, but it's very hard to define. It's either solo gaming or GM-less gaming or journaling or oracles or Tickle Me Elmo or something. I don't know. But solo gaming is what the topic is. And
right,
we had the pleasure of bringing longtime friend of the show and my friend Roz onto the episode. She is a huge solo gamer, GM-less gamer, and we got to pick her brain.
Yeah, no, and it's to kind of relate to the kind of inside joke Keith was talking about. You'll have to listen to the I think I'd call it an interview in whole, but you won't be disappointed with that. And then right after that, you and I are going to do we've talked about this before, but it's kind of roll into a singular segment. We're going to do a play report. We're going to talk about what we've played recently, what we've run recently, and just kind of prattle on about that. So that would be interesting because a lot of our play has intersected, but I'm sure there's a couple things that we've done separately that will be nice to hear about. So, well, without further ado, let's hit it.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
right, listeners, we are back with tonight's main segment. Scott and I, we've got an interesting topic for you, and we've got a special guest in the studio with us tonight. Scott, take it away.
Yep, we sure do, and looking forward to hear her opinion on this particular subject. And that subject we're here to talk about tonight is solo gaming in tabletop RPGs. Now, solo gaming in the hobby itself is nothing new. It pretty much has been around since day one. My understanding is probably the first solo games that were out there was Tunnels and Trolls, which, if I'm not mistaken, the original box set came with a solo game. And as they progress through the years, obviously there's games like game books, Choose Your Own Adventure, Endless Quest books, and so on. And so solo gaming is nothing new, but in this current, golden age of RPGs, solo gaming is as popular as it has ever been, with new solo RPGs coming out almost daily, and a variety of new tools and things that are available out there for you to enjoy yourself and have a more enriching solo RPG experience. But with that, Keith and I, for the most part, are Luddites on the subject.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
At least in the modern sense of the terms. I mean, so our special guest here tonight, though, is someone who is extremely experienced in solo RPGs and has an opinion or two on the variety of RPGs that are available to you to enjoy on your own. Keith, I'm going to toss it back to you, and you can introduce our good friend.
All right, so in the studio with us tonight, live from the sunny South Carolina, actually across town from me, is longtime listener, seldom caller to the podcast, because she's been on before, is our friend, Dragon Player, also known as Roz. Hi, Roz.
Hello.
Yay! Welcome
Editor
to Titterpigs again.
Editor, insert cheering and clapping here.
Oh yeah.
Oh wait,
yeah.
that's
wait,
me.
I'm the editor. That's you.
Too,
that's
so.
you.
Screw it.
No, Roz, thanks for joining us. I know this is a subject I would throw it out there near and dear to your heart because you do a lot of solo gaming. Before we jump into the topic at large, I think we got to kind of define like solo gaming as a whole, solo gaming for you. So what is your take on solo gaming? So but before you answer, there is solo gaming as like the Choose Your Own Adventure style gaming. You know, those game books are still being created. And then there's journaling games, and then there's Oracle-based games. I mean, there's this whole plethora of stuff. And as Scott said, we are absolute solo gaming idiots. So help educate us and our listeners.
What would you like to know?
Why don't we start with
everything?
Yeah. Why don't we start with, though, just maybe you can give our listeners a basic definition of how you would define, solo gaming in RPGs. Like, what would be your take on that?
My take, based on my approach, is GM-less gaming. I hesitate to use solo because a lot of people take exception to solo, and they tend to look down on people who play, quote, solo, because RPGs are a social experience as opposed to just the experience that an individual might want to have.
Right. No, that's
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, some people would do that, I think, and and those people are assholes. But there's always some out there who will be a contrarian, no matter how you define it. But that's interesting, though, that you say GM-less as opposed to solo gaming, because it's weird. Because a lot of times when I talk about solo gaming, and I've referenced it, people kind of get it confused with it's you and another person. And people define that as duet gaming.
Yes.
Solo gaming tends to think of like, well, I'm running something for one person, and since that person's receiving it, that's solo. But I think what we're looking at, of course, and what we're focusing on is the GM-less take. So
at least I think that's where we're going with this conversation.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's
Okay.
you yourself. It's you yourself with a book, a set of dice, or a journal, or just even if it's just a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and it's just you, your imagination, and what you're reading and or rolling or writing down. So I
So
guess the
what's
next
your-
thing. Go ahead.
Okay,
sorry.
go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
No, I mean, well, before we dive in, let's do what we usually do with our special guests. Since this Roz is here, Roz, what was your introduction to gaming? What was what got you into role playing games, and what was the first game that did that?
The first game was Dungeons and Dragons, and it was in a barracks I want to say I was in Fort Hood at the time, and that was in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, wow.
And then there was a very, 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 very long break. And it wasn't until, I want to say, 2015, maybe 2016, I started playing with Keith.
Okay. With games.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are clarifying. I'm playing games with Keith. Games.
Well, let's be clear. Roz is my gaming wife, spouse, partner.
Yes.
And that's why we put not for children on the slider when we upload
Absolutely.
our games. So,
And my wife is fully aware of this.
I am.
So-
I'm the person I think that Keith will call when his wife is done with him.
yeah.
Fact.
Due to gaming.
Yeah, due to gaming. When my wife's bored with me because I'm just sitting around the house moping, she's like, "Call Roz and go play a game, okay?"
Or go have a beer.
God damn it. Yeah.
Or go have
So-
a beer. Yeah.
So yeah, you kind of had the typical, I would almost call it the typical American experience for RPGs, because it seems most international people we talk to, Dungeons and Dragons came second. It was always something else, Warhammer or something else. But so a typical, Dungeons and Dragons was your introduction. You had a bunch, you had some downtime, like all of us have done, and then you started playing again. So obviously you have played, dozens and dozens of games with Keith, not just role playing games. So I know that you're also a board game aficionado, as much, along with, I'm sure, other games and types and styles. But I guess the next question would be, what was your introduction then into solo gaming?
For me, I started solo or playing in a GM-less fashion. It's going to be my new phrase.
She's going to force
Because
that on us, I know.
Yeah, she is.
I get very attached, but not in a clingy way, to my characters. And after a game may end, I want to do more with that character. So I continue their story.
Was there a particular game that you kind of decided to do this, or has this always kind of been that way?
The game was actually a very short-lived Masks of Nyarlathotep. And Daisy Tillingast
Yes, I
had to
remember
take.
Daisy.
She took a hiatus, but she had things she wanted to do, so she did.
This would be my Masks game that fizzled when two of the players, for real life reasons, had to step away from the game table, and we weren't able to find replacement players, and so it fizzled away. But obviously, Daisy had things that she wanted to do, and Roz was there to help Daisy along that life path. So,
cool.
In a GM-less way.
In a GM
So that my understanding was that was a while ago. For you guys,
several years ago.
So, and there really, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, there really wasn't a formatted way to do that. So did you just take it upon yourself to run this thing, or was there something available for you to carry on with this particular character in Call of Cthulhu?
I picked up a copy of the Game Master emulator. It's from Word Mill Publishing, and it was a series. It provided a series of oracles.
Okay.
It was a standalone game, but designed to be played solo if you so chose. So you had all the tools that you needed to do that. Another thing I picked up was Scarlet Heroes. Scarlet Heroes was designed as a solo game or a duet. So one GM and one player. So it was balanced for that.
Interesting. So that's I mean, that wasn't a long time, because I'm familiar with Scarlet Heroes, and I don't know if it's been in print for a while or if there was a most recent reprint of it. which is how it came under my radar. But so it sounds like that these in one form or fashion these have been around for a while now for you to use. So before we get into more of your opinion aspect, can you let us and the listeners know the what you would say is the different types or maybe styles of GM-less and solo gaming? Because you mentioned Oracle. Obviously, you call it GM-less, and we're idiots. We call it solo. And it sounds like there's other styles. So enlighten us. We want to learn.
I think any system where the task resolution is player facing is ripe to play solo. Like Scarlet Heroes, there are other games that are specifically solo design games. Probably the most popular is Ironsworn and now Starforged. Yes. I this year picked up a copy of a game entitled Courier, and in that game, you are a single courier just ferrying packages, messages throughout a future wasteland and trying not to antagonize the different factions you encounter. And so it's a dungeon crawl, for lack of a better word. It's a hex crawl, as it was, yeah.
Right.
It's a hex crawl.
It also sounds like Death Stranding, but we won't get into copyright issues here with video games. So, go on.
The author very clearly in the beginning of the book, it's an homage to Fallout.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The factions are thinly veiled variations. Variations of the names of certain factions in the Fallout series.
Oh, okay. So there's the Cousins of Liberty and so on and whatnot. Yeah. Oh, I get it. I guess so. There's a thing called an oracle, right? Which is used to provide you with resolutions. Because one of the things that I'm most curious about is my experience with GM-less gaming, we'll call it that, is pretty much ends with a certain set of gaming books where you would roll dice. There was, Fighting Fantasy. There was Tolkien Quest. There was even a more recent, semi-recent Fabled Lands, I think it was.
Fabled Lands. There's 7 books in that series.
Right. So, but technically, everything is still pre-written.
Yes.
You're rolling. The only thing that's not necessarily scripted is your rolls, which determine usually combat or which page you might turn to in regards to stuff like that. But oracles are different. So how is it that an oracle provides you, with these resolutions if you're not running a scripted adventure, or are they all scripted adventures in that regards? Can you run a game just like I want? My Call of Cthulhu character to just do. I have a general idea of what I'm doing. They're at Miskatonic University and they're fighting a cult, and let's just see how it plays out. Is that what an oracle can do, or is it different?
The oracle functions. It's a substitute for the GM. If the character has a question that they would pose to a GM, you would pose that question. If you're using a yes/no oracle or a variant of yes/no, starting at yes and, yes but, all those things to give a little tweak to the response, you're going to pose that question based on the situation facing the player, and then you're going to roll your dice. If you are asking whether or not the guards can see you, you're going to roll the dice. If whatever that answer is, you're then going to, as a player, I would have my character respond the same as if I was sitting at a table with a group of players. Then I'm going to try and stealth my way around, and I'm going to pull out my character sheet, look at my stats, and roll my dice. And if I fail, I'm going to take whatever would be the appropriate action that I think a GM would take. That's how I play.
So I have a question. Actually, I have 2 questions. First, are there, and I'm sure there are, and I'm just an idiot, are there any generic like emulators, oracles, something that will mimic the game master that you would recommend? Something that's not like Call of Cthulhu specific or Game X specific that players, people can pick up and just use?
Most of what I use is not related to any system. I've shared with you in the past the Game Master's Apprentice, which is a decks of cards, I believe there are 8 right now, that are themed. There's a horror theme, there's fantasy, sci-fi, and those cards are like multi-purpose cards. There is a section that has keywords, so it'll be a noun, some adjectives. It'll give you a location, so you can just shuffle those cards. A situation comes up, you flip a card, and then you weave whatever it is, whether it's a location that you might have to visit, like where should I be going now? Or if there are even names, like I just encountered a person. Is there someone here? Yes. Who are they? Flip a card. There's a name there.
And the cards, just for listeners, in the cards, because I have one of the decks of cards. I think because you gifted me the horror deck, and I think the cards are brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, those cards actually have dice on them.
I was gonna just bring that up. Those cards have all variations of dice on them too, minus the funky dice from like DCC or whatever. But they have all of your basic polyhedral die rolls all included on the dice.
Yes,
or
so
on the cards.
That set also has a simple yes/no mini oracle, I guess you'd say. So if you had a yes/no question, and you just with that deck of cards, you could sit down and play a session. Because if it's a yes/no question, you just flip it. There are odds, and you also apply a little bit of common sense. If it was foggy, is it more or less likely that if I'm walking around, a guard would see me? So if in that scene it's foggy, then it's less likely. So the odds change. Because you have like yes/no, you also have percentage oracles. Like what percent? What's the probability that this guard or whomever is going to notice me? And those are also on some cards.
Other question. So, because I've tried the GM list thing, solo thing, whatever we're going to call it in this episode, right? Where I've tried to, that's not choose your own adventure, right? Like I'm trying to use those cards and I'm trying to kind of weave something together and use this oracle. I have this problem talking to myself, right? Like I can voice it in my head, but like it just feels weird when I'm having this one-sided conversation. I'm not reading a book, right? But like, so, hey, Keith, are there any guards here and can they see me? Well, Keith, I don't know. Let's flip a card and find out. Okay, Keith, let's do this. I feel weird doing that. I mean, do you run into that?
I don't do that, though. And I've watched a few actual plays that are almost everybody and his cousin now who thinks they have a mic and internet connection and a camera.
Oh, like us.
And they think that what they're doing is like really good. And there are some that are good. And one person, his show is Me, Myself, and Die. He's a voice actor. He uses minis. He creates dioramas. He does all this, and he does voices, and he does these conversations. I don't do that.
Right.
If I had a question that I needed to ask a GM, I don't have to say it out loud. I know what that question is, and then I would just posit like what I think about it, and then go there with the die roll. So I don't do the talking back. I don't have conversations with NPCs out loud.
Okay.
Right. So
I guess that for me, that's like the weird thing. Like I'm having the conversation. I've done it where I've tried to have it out loud. It just doesn't feel right, because like I'm asking myself, answering myself, and I feel like an absolute retard. And then I'm having it in my head, and I get it, right? Like I'm kind of positing the questions and finding the answers with the cards, but it's not clicking with me. Like as a player, as a gamer, it's just not like for me, it's not a fulfilling game experience. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know.
It depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I was going to say expectations, because I'm with Roz. I mean, and to be fair, I growing up, I was the youngest child. Both my brothers were, in college and or married when I reached the age when I was kind of getting into gaming, and so there was a lot of downtime. Plus, the typical Gen X latchkey child where I was home by myself most of the time. So with a lot of voracious reading, you you don't necessarily have these conversations, but you have the activities where you can envision these things. And whereas, if I'm going to go to, the king of Rock Hill to have a conversation about, hiring his guards to come help me out on a caravan run, if we're role playing with a group of people, yes, we would play out that conversation because there's a group of us. We wouldn't just, show up and say, I roll charisma, you win. But, and this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Roz, but, with these cards, you can play out that resolution. And technically, in your head, this is occurring if you have that type of imagination. But the conversation just kind of almost like not hand wipe, but unnecessary. You're coming, you're moving from conclusion to conclusion. Because, I wouldn't do the same. I wouldn't sit there and go, Your Majesty, I beg of you to provide me your guards. And here I've brought gold and jewels. And who are you who comes to my wife would divorce me and my children would, put me in an
disown
asylum.
you. And
Yeah.
Scott would turn up at my house asking for a spare bedroom.
And that guy, I know of him. I haven't watched him, but I've heard and read stuff about him. Obviously he must be enjoying himself, but let's be honest, a lot of that is performative. He's doing that for an audience, for people to enjoy.
And he has a Patreon, so.
Yeah. So, I've got just a quick question though. When you speak of it, you speak of cards. So the one that you use is a deck of cards, right?
Yes.
Are these, when you sit down to play, are these cards in different piles based on situations that you try? It's not just a deck, right, that you just randomly pull stuff out.
It is a deck of cards. There are, on the the Game Master's Apprentice set of cards, there are, I believe, 13 different elements. So you have the dice as a single element. You have compass directions. You have sense responses. So there's an icon for nose, eyes, touch, smell. So there will be words like, if I was going into a room, what do I see here? I would flip the card, look for the eye icon, and it'll give me a prompt. Because mostly that's what these are. They are just a series of prompts. That's what's on the cards.
Right.
So I shuffle the cards and I draw a card based on, and I pick the element that's appropriate for that scene.
So would you do something different if you were doing a published adventure? Let's just say I'm going to run Call of Cthulhu, Masks of Nyarlathotep solo. Would there be something that would allow that to progress differently, or do you think something like that might be beyond?
I think that's beyond.
Okay.
It's what I think, for me, for solo, it's a sandbox experience.
Okay.
But Masks, while it is a sandbox, it is it's a scripted sandbox.
There you go.
it does have, it has some rails hidden under the sand.
Yes.
It has some points you have to hit.
Right.
And if it's purely a sandbox experience where the Oracle preference that you have works really well in, you're probably not going to hit those markers in Masks, unfortunately. I think some parts of Masks you could do well. I think some parts of Horror on the Orient Express you could do well. Some of the scenarios with it you could thoughts around with the Oracle and do okay with. But the whole in its totality, no, I don't think it would work.
If you would I would think if you took key points, hand wave the travel, all of that stuff, maybe just do key highlights. Maybe and I think that holds true for some published. Because again, there are published adventures out there, then those are the game books of old and new. And as Roz mentioned, there's ones that are specifically made for that. Because what's the Scarlet Heroes? That's a thick book. At least the one that I saw. It's not just a couple pages in a pamphlet. And
it's a pretty thick. Thick being a relative term. I think it's maybe 120 some odd pages.
It's more than that.
Pages.
And Fabled Lands is a stack of many, many, many different books.
Yeah.
So one more question, then I'll toss it back over to Keith. But so the one you're using is specifically cards, right?
Right, and I have many different decks of cards.
Okay, so but the first one I actually looked at was Kevin Crawford's Oracle for his games. Beyond, and I sat down with that, and as I was clearing the blood away from my nose from the hemorrhage I was getting trying to comprehend it, I think that right there shut me off, just of solo games, because I'm going, what am I looking at? How am I supposed to use this abstract mathematical, tool that really just didn't seem to make any sense to me? I'm like, this is an Oracle? Who the hell uses this? So, are you familiar with that one? And am I just stupid, or? I'm
currently working with Cities Without Numbers right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm having a great time.
So you're using his Oracle, or are you using your cards for that?
I am right now setting up the adventure. So I've created my character. I'm working on fleshing out Megacorps and the districts and the city and all that good stuff. But once that's done, I will probably use whatever Oracle I think is appropriate, because I might pick the ones from the Game Master's emulator. I might use cards. I might use what's in Scarlet Heroes. That one, that Oracle in the back of that.
So she has
what you're
options.
So what you're saying is I'm an idiot.
No,
because the one that I looked at reminded me of the old Thaco dial. The little slider, this circular dial that would allow you to move stuff back and forth. It looked like a mathematical slide.
Like an old slide rule.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and it was one of those things to help people. If you sat there and you just looked at it out of the corner of your eye, you're like, what is this thing? This doesn't make any sense. And that's kind of the experience I had with that particular Oracle. Now, this was years ago, so maybe he has improved it to make it more accessible, or maybe I was just having a bad day. But I'm just like, I thought this would be easier than that. But so yeah, that's it. So
the only Oracle from Kevin Crawford I'm familiar with is what is in Scarlet Heroes. That's the only one of his I've seen. But I'm using I have Stars Without Numbers, Seas Without Numbers, World Without Numbers, and I use all those tables.
Okay. All right. So I don't know, maybe it was just a bad dyslexic day, or, I was done, but I'll take a look at it again. Maybe there's a very good situation where I may have been looking at something else. Like, I'm like, what's an Oracle for, Worlds Without Numbers? And someone said, look at this. So, but do you think that because of that might be a turnoff to some people? Like, do you think that these Oracles can be a bit difficult for people to grasp or obtuse, or do you think maybe it's kind of like more like maybe Keith's thing, where it's just like they don't want to dance like no one's looking, so they're just going to sit it out.
I think there's so many right now. It just takes a little looking, and if you went to drive through at this very moment and you typed in solo, you would find a lot of options. You'll find some dedicated solo games, some dedicated solo adventures for different systems. Mm-hmm. You'll find a link to the Game Master's Apprentice cards, so send you to drive through cards. There's a lot out there. Paul Bimler did the Solo Investigators Handbook, and that's what I was using initially for Call of Cthulhu.
Interesting.
In your opinion, how does that Solo Investigators Guide vary from, say, Oracle cards or some other published Oracle, or is it just another Oracle?
It is almost 100 pages long.
Okay.
There are tables to generate your encounters. There are tables to flesh out your investigator even. And I believe in that it kind of leans into the journaling, because you're supposed to every day, you start a day, you put the date, the time, and you'll do things for that day. And then there's specific things you have to do in your downtime, and I forget what they are because it's been years.
Okay. Let's turn a corner, as it were, in GM-less games or solo games or whatever we're calling them today.
You can call it what you like. The reason I chose to say GM-less, and I will say GM-less role-playing games or GM-less board games, and I choose to do that because of the attitude that I believe is just solely directed at the word solo.
Oh, no, that's fair. No, I'm right there with you. I don't personally have a dog in that fight. Like, I don't have a problem with the term solo or versus GMless. I play solo, like, war games, right? Like, I'll set it up, I'll push cardboard counters around and be an armchair general for an afternoon. I'm totally good with it, you know.
Because if you look for GMless, you can see that there are a lot of GMless systems and GMless games that are actually designed for groups because no one wants to GM or no one feels comfortable.
Right.
So it allows groups to play without having to have someone step up and be the GM.
No, you're absolutely right.
That boggles my mind. That's
yeah.
We're going to play together, but we're not going to have a GM. I'm like,
that's a thing. I mean, Fiasco's that way. Fiasco has no facilitator. Like, somebody gets the game going, but after that, it's.
I'm
So
game
it's a GMless
specifically
game.
designed for that, but I mean, I couldn't imagine someone saying a group of 4 people getting together and we're going to play Worlds Without Numbers without a GM. You know, at that point, I'm like,
that boggles my mind too.
Can't
But
one of you just
who am
do
I?
it? Yeah. Okay.
I'm
So
just
yeah,
some
we
old
were.
guy.
We were turning a corner. We made a U-turn, so let's
Yes.
go back again
So
and turn that corner.
get back on the let's get back on the highway here, and let's move over to journaling games. So that's a whole separate experience in GMless and solo gaming, because obviously journaling games are by nature, by its very name, are a different play experience. What
Very
is
popular.
your take or opinion on journaling games? Your thing, not your thing?
Definitely
what do you got
not
to
my
say?
thing. It's like keeping a diary. That's
Okay.
what I feel like. That would be the experience for me. If I'm given a prompt and saying, "Well, how did you feel today?" and then I write down my feelings, or what did I see
It's
today?
a psych experiment.
Yes,
Got it.
I watched the sunset.
Have you experienced? Because I mean, the popular one, the 800-pound gorilla, is the 1,000-year-old vampire. Did you sit down with that one? Have you had a moment with that one?
I did not. Was not interested. The only I did English Eerie,
Okay.
and that was,
That's Scott
Malthouse's?
Malthouse's. Yeah, Scott Malthouse's one. Yeah. Okay.
Quill. I've done some of the Quill
Scots.
games, and they kind of liberally use the word solo game.
Oh.
But
okay.
again, that's Scott, so
Yeah.
they're all
And-
kind of in the same, I don't want to say same vein, because I've tinkered with them a little bit. They all kind of have a very familiar feel.
And coming next episode, we're interviewing Scott Malthouse.
No, we
no,
are
but-
not. We
But
could,
no,
though.
I've already done that on my channel. It's fine. But no, but the thing that about his though, you know, his are very just, you know, couple pages and allow you to do a few things with it.
Yeah.
1,000-Year-Old Vampire is, you know, it's a
It's a
big
chunky
book
book.
and it's expensive as hell. It is one of those things where, you know, to me, that particular one seems more kind of like a trophy, right? Kind of a notch on the belt. Like, you know, I bought this, I paid $50 for this, I did the journaling, and there it's on the shelf and then
Okay.
you look around at all your friends, you go, does anyone want to read it? And they go, no.
Right.
And then it sits on there and gathers dust.
But okay, so let's kind of flip that a little bit to the side. So our friends over at oh my god, the guys who publish Shiver.
Yes.
I'm drawing a blank. Sorry guys. On the publisher.
It's okay. Hold on a minute. Add name here. There we go. Okay, I'll put that in later.
But those guys have a solo journaling game that they recently kickstarted, and theirs is a little different. So it is a journaling game. It's a solo play experience, but the intent is when you're done with the game, they want you to take the game book, the physical game book, and give it to somebody else, and for that person to take it. It's almost like it's a cursed item, right? You take it and then they play it using, like, you've used the prompts in the book and played, and then that next person gets those prompts and the things that you did or wrote in the book, and then they have to kind of do the journaling as well, and it becomes this kind of living thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a different take, more so than like a, I don't know, 1,000-Year Vampire
just
trophy thing on a shelf. But
but how do they handle it? I mean, Raj, you mentioned that it's like a diary. So is it just each day there's just a prompt and your answer is as creative as you're capable of it being, or is there any randomness to it like in other games?
In which game?
And just journaling games in general. I mean,
I really don't do journaling at all.
Well, like Scott's. We'll take Scott's for like quills, right? So what would you say are the general rules that you would follow for quills?
There was a setup. I recall like arriving at the house, meeting the butler.
Right.
And then I think going to the library, looking for things. I'm forgetting the story now. But it was like that. And then just, what am I going to do now? What am I going to look for? And that kind of thing. And with that, we used a deck of cards.
Okay. All right.
See, Void 1680 has a setup. And you create a playlist, and then you use a deck of a slimmed down deck of poker cards for the randomization. That's your oracle, is a slimmed down deck of poker cards.
Yeah. I think in English area was
for your prompts.
It was like 4 through 7. I think were the cards that you pulled out, and then based on the suit, that determined.
I think so. Yeah.
The outcome.
But they also have a little bit of a flavor to that, where when you're done with that, you can upload an audio of that to a cheap AM broadcasting channel that will then transmit your experience out. So it's almost seems like journaling games are a writing exercise, but people need to. It's like a plain piece of chicken, right? A plain piece of chicken is nutritious, it's healthy, but it's bland and flavorless. But it seems like a lot of these journaling games need to add something extra to it. They need to fry it, or they need to shake and bake it, or they need dipping sauce to make it interesting. Like the big thing about 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is it's a beautiful book. It's this beautiful, elaborate book that makes it seem something different. Whereas if someone handed you just a plain piece of white paper and said, fill this out, regarding a vampire, you'd be like, I don't know. And with the broadcasting up to an AM station and then passing it on to someone else, but what it boils down to, it's a different experience. It's a writing exercise, and some people enjoy that. Some people, potential writers or even potential designers or creators may be using that to, buff up the writing skills. But it doesn't seem to me, at least from your opinion, Roz, as fulfilling an experience as much fun as as utilizing the other GM-less aspects of a game. So.
I mean, from my perspective, because I've read 1,000-Year Vampire, like the mechanical part of it. Scott Mulhouse's stuff. I've looked at Void 1680. They're exercise for me. They are exercises in creative writing. Yeah, at its most basic level, that's what they are. Now, if you are somebody unlike me that enjoys those kind of exercises, like, hey, I love, if you're somebody that wakes up in the morning and goes, hey, what's my creative writing prompt for the day, and gets down and dirty and creates some fiction, some literature to go off of a prompt, you're probably going to find those journaling games to your liking.
Yeah.
That is something that you do anyways, and that's fulfilling for you. I'm not a creative writer. I mean, I can write scenarios and I can do that kind of stuff. I suck at it, but creative writing is not where I find enjoyment in the grand scheme of things. For those that do, fantastic, and I'm glad they like journaling games, and I'm glad that creators are making those things and people are buying them. They're just not my cup of tea. However, Roz keeps talking to me, and we go out for beers, and she's like, oh my God, you got to look at Crawford's stuff. And hey, have you gotten Stars Without Numbers yet, or Cities Without Numbers yet? And she keeps throwing books down on the table in the pub, and I'm looking through them, and I'm like, she keeps teasing me with this stuff. So I may have to delve a little deeper into some of this other GM-less gaming, because I personally do like prompts, whether I'm doing a full playthrough for a full play experience, but I like prompts for like in my Game Master's toolbox for when I'm trying to come up with ideas in between sessions or to come up with a new scenario idea for a group, and anything that I can use that's creative in that way is super useful for me.
Yeah.
So,
So Keith,
there's that added benefit.
Have you looked at Dragonbane? Have you looked at that solo book?
I have not looked at the solo part of Dragonbane yet.
Because that's more or less just that's what I do. How Free League have put together what's in Dragonbane. That's how I roll. You're given an opening. You're giving it. This is the setup. You're given. This is what you're going in here to do right now, and then you just start rolling dice. But one of the first things, like, how many areas are there? What kind of areas are these? And we just go from there.
Interesting. Okay, that clarifies some things to me, because I've read it. I haven't sat down with it, but I did go through it, and that does help. And I enjoy those. I mean, mind you, that's kind of seems to be the thing, is not necessarily they're providing you with a solo experience, but the solo aspect is like a tutorial to the game.
Right.
Call of Cthulhu does, or I should say Chaosium's done that. And then obviously they've followed up with several different of their solo games that are, more popular than ever because they keep printing them and people keep buying them.
Right.
But I could definitely, so Dragonbane is one of those games where I myself can see, since I played it quite a bit and run it quite a bit, where yes, I could see that game being relatively easy to run that as a solo game, just because of how those adventures are laid out. There is a script in that, there's a literal campaign in that book. And you can pretty much go through that entire thing with little role playing, because there's obvious tasks and goals to get to, and you don't have to talk yourself like a crazy person like Keith. So
somebody's got to excel at something, and that something is that, and that person is me.
So one more question. This is an opinion, and this may be obvious, but I just curious what you think. Do you feel that the rise in popularity of the solo games was primarily due to the lockdown situation that we went through? Because that, where it kind of seems to have just, started to make a very steady rise, and it almost seems like it hasn't leveled off. It seems like it's become even more popular even after things have opened up again.
I absolutely believe that, and I would hope that publishers and creators would recognize that, because this is like, I think I've said to Keith for a long time, talking about just solo gaming in general, whether it's board games, card games, RPGs. From a marketing standpoint, you're going to make more money if you make games that 5 solo players want than a game for a group of 5 people, because you're going to sell one game to a group of 5 people. You're going to sell 5 games to me and mine.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
That's fact.
Everyone's got
absolute fact.
Yeah, and there's no shortage of them. Was Colosso? Was that a winner? Was that an any winner?
That was an any winner.
Yeah. Delve. To a lesser extent, and you may be familiar with these, but I've actually played a couple of these. Four Against series. For Against Darkness, yeah. And
those,
we have an opinion.
Oh, we do, and those are not role-playing games. The author, if you look on TTRPGS right now, he will actually call it out. These are not role-playing games, because you're going to be disappointed if you go in there and think it's a dungeon crawl. You're going to play 4 characters, and that's, for me, is the first problem. I only want one character. I don't want to run 4 characters. I want to have my character. This is what I'm embodying right now. Yeah.
Right. Solitaire.
So big old dungeon crawl where you just randomly roll. But when it comes to the tables, yes, like you're going to roll to what is in this now segment of the dungeon that I'm drawing. You're going to roll on those tables, see what's there.
And you also have to draw a map on graph paper.
I like
Who
that
wants
part.
To do that shit anymore?
I did that,
fine.
and they look awesome.
When I did it, they looked like shit.
They look awesome. I do the shading. Oh, it's great.
Oh, see.
The
She's a
knurling.
doodler.
So that's
She's a doodler.
okay. So maybe it's just the whole journaling thing, because I mean, obviously you're being creative with it. You're not just there to, use and abuse it and move on. So you have something that can attest your experience, and yet journaling is just not your thing. You just don't want to have that that part of it,
Because that's not a game to me. That's not a game.
Got it. Okay, perfect. It's
Games,
not a game.
There's an outcome. There's success and failure. There's no
Right.
I don't know. I don't know of any journaling game that has success and failure.
So
Development.
other things like. So what about the world building solo games? Like Delve and other things like that. Do you consider that to be similar, or is that something different? Because there's no.
Just not me.
Okay.
For me, GM-less gaming, solo gaming, call it what we're going to call it. I do that because I have a lot of games. I want to play the games that I have.
Should we
have run Vampire for my Vampire 5th edition by myself, and it was fun.
Okay, we won't do this here. You'll need to tell us more about that, because I'm sure it'll take some time. But one of the most role-playing heavy games that I would say is out there, with it being Vampire, it's a storytelling game that that technically should involve several different personalities. Hence, it's moved on to physical LARPing games and whatnot. I would not envision that to be a solo game unless it was like specifically written as a book.
Well, I ran the quick start. It's I can't remember the name of it. It's what I did with you and with Keith. We did it last summer.
With me and Taylor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I can't remember the name of it.
And I ran it I ran it for myself.
Interesting. So that's enlightening, because that kind of takes, again, my Luddite perception on what solo games can handle. It's more than just GM-less games. Should we call it game masturbation, or is that too much? Anyways, so that does open up the doors to, again, my general idea of what it is. So it's interesting.
Well, okay. I've played Forbidden Lands, Zwiehander. I'll play a lot. It's just whatever's on my shelf, I'll take it. I did Cyberpunk Red.
I'm sorry.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, well, then maybe I should try soloing. That may allow me to enjoy Cyberpunk Red. It's different than what it used to be. Anyways, we're not here for reviews.
No, that's a whole different episode.
I just feel like and I have a ton of stuff, that I can take any game off my shelf, player facing or not, and I could run it and have an enjoyable experience, and run it as if I were at a table. So I don't do journaling, but I do record what I'm doing. So I will record, I'll write out a scene, figure out what's going on in that scene, what am I trying to accomplish, what skill or attribute is appropriate. I will write that down, roll the dice, and record that, so that I know why this crappy thing happened to me because of my crappy die rolling, and then continue to march.
She does. She's a note taker. I mean, you know that, Scott. You've gamed with her too. So
no, Roz.
She is a note taker.
She's the one you want in your game.
Yep.
Because of that. Everyone needs a note taker. And Roz is definitely the one that I thoroughly enjoy having, because I know without question when the GM says so. So anyone remember what's going on, and we can just sit there and step back as Roz steps forward, and she can cover that. Yeah. Whereas other people, if it was just me and Keith, we'd look at each other like a couple idiots. And my note says giant baboon. What does yours say, Keith?
Hissing in the wind. Done. Okay. Yep. There we go. Well, Roz has like 4 pages of detailed notes that don't say anything related to bamboos pissing in, or
bamboos pissing.
It's so my characters.
Keith.
So my characters continue their story.
Yeah. Yep. So no, she does great backstory. She does great notes. I still would like to know whatever happened to Daisy Tillinghast after.
I could tell you.
Yeah.
I can let you read it.
Might have to do it over a beer.
No, I can let you read it.
Oh,
See what I
that's
mean?
the type of confidence that I like to hear in solo games like that, because I can tell you right now, if I sat down and did one, it's not that I wouldn't want you to read it, you couldn't, because it would be note taking like I would in any other game, just random nonsense and words of a madman.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Keith, do you have anything else to ask Roz?
No, I think we kind of hit all the high points I wanted to talk about. Journaling versus more like Oracle use. So we've talked that kind of those different things. I mean, choose your own adventure. I mean, I think that's self-explanatory.
Right.
Make this decision, go to this entry or this page. I mean, the Chaosium's doing that. There's some other publishers out there doing that still.
Yes.
That's been going since the late 70s. It hasn't stopped.
Right.
So I don't know that we need to go down that road. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. So
yeah,
I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, I just have
you got any other questions?
just one question, and if Roz, do you have, before I ask my questions, do you have anything else that you would like to add to the conversation?
Okay, Scott, I want you to grab a pencil. I'm going to give you my recipe for playing RPGs by yourself. Ready? Here we go.
Go ahead.
I think I said this to you before, Keith, that my approach is kind of like GM prep. We're going to generate an adventure seed, right? You're going to establish an opening scene. You're going to create the narrative. You're going to find the conflicts, the obstacles, the motivations of your characters, your NPCs. You're going to face the consequences of your actions, or flee if that's possible when things go sideways. You set up, you create whatever the encounter is in the moment, and then you RNG those outcomes, resolve it, and you just advance the story and continue to march.
So here's what I have. I have
Duck soup.
grenadine seed, create scent, motorcade, face concentrics, and in the women resolve carpet cleaner. So,
Yes, resolve carpet cleaner in a spray bottle.
Got it. Okay. See, I was born for this.
And
Give
it's
me
the
my
brand
first journal.
Resolve.
So,
There you go.
Yes.
You missed that
so,
part. That's the important.
That's all you need to do.
Ingredient.
Oh, and for your character, create
Yes.
a really, really, really deep backstory.
Yeah, 10 pages that nobody will read.
It doesn't need to be.
It's just you. It's fine.
When you're journaling.
Yeah.
No, because, well, you guys played with me. I always know what my character will do, and I'm going to play accordingly. And 9 times out of 10, it is suboptimal. I'm going to do things that my character would do, as you've seen in RuneQuest.
Right, but I think the difference, for clarity
way.
reason, I think the difference between like what you're talking about and somebody that writes a 10-page backstory and hangs their entire life existence on that 10-page fucking backstory is you have conceptual ideas of what your character is, and you love the flaws in a character. You love the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent of a character. All the things that make real people real. Right. Where somebody that gets, makes this 10-page D&D backstory. I just use D&D as a loose term, everybody. So calm your knickers down. They get so wrapped up on it, and they don't play to the strengths and weaknesses of the backstory. They expect the game and not everybody, but a lot of people expect the game master to play to their strengths and weaknesses of their character to the exclusion of everybody else. Yeah. And you don't do that. You take it upon yourself to play up the strengths and weaknesses of your character as you perceive them, and that is amazing. Yeah,
my backstory is not a story. It is, this is what I like, this is how I see people, this is how I interact. And when I role play, when I'm in a group, that's how my character is going to be true to those. To those tenets.
I think backstory is one of those terms in the hobby that has been morphed into a negative, whereas it can mean something as simple as what you just defined, Roz. It's not the 18-page rehash of the story of Bruce Wayne, but in fantasy terms, so you can be an edgelord. So it's
in my mind, it's I know we're on a tangent now, but it's a couple of bullet points of, like you said, Roz, like how do you deal with broad situations? How do you interact with people? you know, how do you dress? Like, just generally, how do you dress? Like, what's your dress and appearance look like? How do you interact with people? How, you know, in general situations, how are you going to react? I mean, you know, the very broad brushstroke, bullet points, and you can be done. I mean, you don't need a 10-page backstory.
That brings me to a observation that a neat little solo game, or side game you can call it, that reflects that is the family creation in RuneQuest, where you go through a few prompts, you roll some dice, and at the end of the story, you have a rich family history that goes through 2 generations. Yeah. And that's where you step out onto the pitch. So, cool. Well, I mean, so let's conclude this with just 3 questions for you. Well, 1 question, Roz, but 3 answers. In your solo gaming experience, what is your top 3 games that you played GM-less, if you can recall?
Zwiehander.
Okay.
The Sixth Gun, which was Savage Worlds, and it's one of my least favorite systems, but I wanted to play the Sixth Gun.
Ooh.
That'll make one of our listeners happy.
Yes.
Several of our listeners happy.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to give you 4 because it's Eldritch Tales, which is the white box, and Silent Legions, also from Kevin Crawford.
Okay.
Oh, someone likes Kevin.
Last kissing. But Silent Legions is good stuff. So
yeah. All right. So all right. Well, Keith, I'll let you write us out since Roz is your dear friend and you're closer to her, so your broadband works better. So.
Oh, thanks. Well, Roz, thanks for joining us in the studio tonight. Greatly appreciated. Your opinion is invaluable as always, because we are stupid idiots when it comes to GM-less gaming. As we've learned, it's not solo, it's GM-less.
Well, I was told I'm just a sad person. That's why I do it.
Oh, who said that?
No.
We're gonna take him down.
Did I say that?
No, Scott did. Not you, Scott. Not you, Scott.
Oh.
Other Scott.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
He says I have no friends, but then he says, "Oh, but you know Keith."
Oh,
so
I know this
I
other
just told him
Scott.
I don't know what that makes you then. If I have no friends, but I know you, but he still says I have no friends.
I could hear 150 listeners just go, "Okay, we're gonna kick Scott's ass." Not me.
No, not this Scott. Not Titterpigs Scott. It's another Scott that I do know.
Okay, good. All right.
I'll kick old man Scott's ass. That's all there is to it.
Because I'm that solo player across the board.
But anyways, Roz, thank you for being in the studio with us.
Thanks for having me.
As I said, your opinion is very important, and on a subject we actually haven't talked about on the podcast. So this is enlightening for me. I mean, I know you and I talk about this on a regular basis, but every time this subject comes up, I am further educated on this subject, and maybe I will delve further into having a Keith conversation again.
Yes. And please give us any notes that you have. We'll put it in the description. And any games that you reference, Roz, we'll try to put links in there also for the listeners so they can link up to it. So if you have that, send it to us. Otherwise, we'll go and grab it from the conversation. So all right. Well,
I think that's going to wrap up the main segment, and we're going to ride off into the sunset into our final segment of the episode.
Dun, 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 dun. It's play report time. How about that for an intro?
Wow. That is a fucking killer intro, my friend.
I mean, it's a working title, but it's good for now. Sometimes you just need a stupid placeholder. But yes. Welcome to our last segment for this episode, where Keith and I are going to give a few play reports on some games that we've been playing, some games that we've been running, and also some games that we have been playing and running together. So we're going to go ahead and start out with talking about a few games that we intersected on. And first and foremost, we will start with talking about Shadow Dark, and I'll let you lead into this, Keith, because you are the game master for this game that we started running a few weeks ago.
So as listeners might recall, I lost my mojo last year, and, well, I got it back. And I'm happy to report that I have been running several games, one of which has been Shadow Dark. Mm-hmm. And Scott has been one of my players that I've been torturing on Wednesday evenings, my time. This is a fantastic game. I'm really loving the vibe of it. It's got some old school fantasy feel. It's got some new school fantasy feel. So if you're familiar with the old D&D and some modern D&D, either one, you'll find, at least in my opinion, you'll feel at home in some form or fashion with this game. But it has some very unique things to it. Yeah. Like, I always go to like torches, right?
Yeah.
No, none of the characters can see in the dark. Everybody is like a human in D&D. You're stuck in the dark and you can't see. So you need torches, lanterns, light spells.
Right.
However, there's a catch. What's the catch, Scott? I know you like it too.
The catch is it's on a timer. Which is interesting. So when you light a torch, you start a timer or anything like that in real time, and that's how long your torches last.
60 minutes of real at the table time is how long it lasts. So if you're in the middle of a combat or you're crawling, as they call it, dungeon delving, whatever you want to call it, and you're not paying attention and the timer goes off, all of a sudden it just got dark.
Right.
And the risk for continuing on or whatever it is you're doing if you're in the middle of a combat just amped up, and everything got even more risky to press on without torches,
right,
or a light spell or whatever it is. And that's just like one of the interesting little flavor bits that it has.
Yes,
I like how it does its version of death saving throws, more so than I like the way D&D does it. I like its luck token, which is basically inspiration in D&D 5e.
You do? I don't remember you handing us out any yet. But anyways, go on.
Well, you got to do something worthy to earn it.
Oh, fine.
And I keep forgetting. So, because I'm cutting my teeth and I'm learning the rules just like you guys.
Right.
Hey, I'm willing to admit I fuck up.
Right.
So it's good.
Right. No, go ahead.
What's your opinion? Give me your take.
It's interesting, right? Because I mean, obviously, I'm old, and thus by default, old school. And of course, I grew up playing that old school particular style of D&D and other games, so to speak. It does have, for me, a kind of a nice mesh between the two to make it more appealing. Now, a lot of times when you say a game is trying to be more appealing and more open to all, that can be like the nail in the coffin for a lot of people, because then it's just like.
Fact.
Because people equate that with it being easy, but
it's not easy.
It's not easy. No, it is interesting, and the bells and whistles that it has isn't just fluff, which is nice. And I'll admit that I didn't back it. I originally did back it, but then I kind of got cold feet and dropped it, because I'm thinking, originally it was just like, well, what do I need another old school game for?
Right, I was in the same boat too.
Yeah,
and I bought it when it went on retail sale.
Yeah, but combat is quick. We've had a few sessions of combat. It definitely leans a bit more to the improvisational side of what you would consider old school or OSR. The rulings not rules type thing, because there's a lot of. You have a certain set of skills, so therefore you kind of have to think on your toes rather than just rely on your character sheet, which I enjoy. Other people may not. There are people who, well, I need to have a skill for everything in order for me to figure out what I'm going to do. But it's light enough and easy enough to sit down and just pick up and start playing. But there's enough to it to keep both old school and new school interested. The only detriment that I saw initially in it, of course, is its primary focus is, dungeon delving and whatnot, which is not everyone's thing, but it's very popular and people have been creating new and exciting stuff for it. I understand that there's either the publisher or the author themselves already created an above world hex crawl type thing for it, or a third party did, so it's expanding out.
There's some hex crawl stuff already created for it by a third party publisher.
Right.
That was, if I remember correctly, an Any winner last year. Okay. Temple of the Jaguar Princess, I think, is what it's called.
Close enough. Whatever fits on the side of a van. So.
Yeah, exactly. I actually played the first part of it, so I'm probably butchering the name, but I actually played the first part
Right.
of that scenario, and it's actually a really good scenario too. So
Yeah.
no wonder it won an Emmy.
Yeah. No, but I guess the big thing is if a game has me looking forward to the next session, it's done its job, and that's what Shadow Dark has done. So I'm looking forward to getting back into the next session tomorrow night. Which it will be on the Wednesday, and seeing where it takes us, because there's certain things that, in hindsight, after I sat down with it and thought about it, like, oh, there's other things that I might want to try and see how this works out. So yeah, it's
good.
I give it three thumbs up. Counting
that's scary.
Yeah,
but okay.
Don't worry about it. Don't ask.
I'm not gonna ask.
So
there's another game that I've been running.
Uh-huh.
That Scott was a player. I've run it twice now. I think I've mentioned it in a previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like Scott's quick hot take on it. Mm-hmm. Walking Dead.
Yeah.
From Free League.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran the starter scenario that you played in,
mm-hmm.
and I find that iteration of the year zero to be pretty down and dirty.
Okay.
Super fast, very light
mm-hmm.
as compared to some of the other ones, less encumbered. I enjoyed running the scenario. I'm actually going to start reading the full core rulebook here soon and kind of explore some of the other things that are outside the parameters of the starter set.
Right.
Like actually having a haven and, doing maybe some solo gaming
mm-hmm.
and some of the other things that are part of the core book, which is not all that big compared to some of their other books.
Right.
But what's your thought on playing it at the table?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying that I am not a Walking Dead fan.
Fair.
I've watched most of the first season, but it didn't catch me like everyone else did. I definitely was big on the zombie burnout that kind of occurred, before and during that period of time when it came out, and I just could care less.
Right, me too.
So I'm not grounded in the world of the lore like other people might be, and which I do with other games. Everyone has their license IP that, like, oh, this is fantastic, I can't wait to play in the sandbox. But I will admit that I feel that there wasn't quite enough time for me to give a proper opinion on it, because in our particular session, as enjoyable as it was, it was tense, it was exciting, but I feel that our particular group, now mind you, this has nothing to do with Keith, this is just how it played out, we didn't really get as much time with the primary IP, which is The Walking Dead, as some of the others that you ran it for did. Now that's fair. We did get with the with the big thing about an apocalyptic world is the most horrible creatures that you can deal with in this post-apocalyptic zombified world is not the zombies, but it's the humans. So on that in that regards, it was great, and the rules themselves. I mean, I think my whole gist of it is I don't really have a big platform to stand on to compare it to other ones, because I have never played Mutant Year Zero, the godfather to all of it all. Okay, and I know you have your comparisons to it. I know others do, and I've played iterations of it throughout the other games, but I feel that if it was going to be a one shot, and this may be just this particular scenario, it really should be ramped up to 1,000, kind of like a cinematic aspect. Whereas this one felt like this adventure felt like it was the beginning of a campaign.
Yeah, I got that feeling too.
Yeah.
Now there are ways from a game master's perspective,
mm-hmm.
I could have done things differently to give it more cinematic, like the ramping it up to 1,000,
right.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, no.
Now I get the chance to run it again this coming weekend, mm-hmm. For another group of players, so maybe I'll ramp it up on that.
I mean, it's one of those where I would probably need to spend more time with it and also read the book, because this is one of the few where I went in totally blind, and
that's fair, and
also
that's a good way to make an assessment.
Yeah, and but it's something that maybe in a future date. When we do like another play report thing, maybe I will have played it more or experienced for, maybe even run it to get a better idea of it. But I would still say it was entertaining enough, but there wasn't enough in there, and I'm not familiar enough with the IP to say, hey, this is better than any other zombie game that exists.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Well, we also had a nice little cozy bow on the end of a campaign that you and I played in with what seemed like 4 years. Our 6 seasons in Sartar campaign. Now, we had already announced that we completed it, but due to the insistence of one of our fellow players who felt like, well, is that all? What do you mean? We need some sort of epilogue. And our game master Roy was more than kind enough to provide that, and I want to say I'm glad he did. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think the epilogue to 6 Seasons in Sartar, which happens to be the opening scenario for the next chapter in the overarching campaign, is the opening scenario for Company of the Dragon.
Yes,
is fantastic. It ties all the loose ends up so nicely that before I went into the epilogue, which we played, I think it was a total of 3 hours.
Yeah.
4 hours. It was one session and like an hour into another session. And before we started it, I was like, I could probably live without the epilogue.
Yeah.
I was fine with it the way it ended. And when we finished it, my opinion had drastically changed.
Yes.
I didn't know I needed it until it was over.
Bingo.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it tied everything up. It was so nicely done. Now, a lot of that is the way in which Roy runs his game.
Yes.
And that's a shout out and kudos to Roy for the way in which he game masters and presents fiction and stuff. He does a stellar job.
Yeah.
But it's also the source material, right? It's the scenario itself.
Yes.
Ties it all nicely and sets you up. If we were to go down the road, go into playing the rest of Company of the Dragon, we are set up with a good, solid framework. As I said, when we did our kind of post-game kind of chat, I really wish that the author would take that scenario and append and add it to the 6 Seasons book as the epilogue,
right?
The final chapter, and then also leave it in the Company of the Dragon. That way, if you only do the first book, you have a nice bow to close it all out.
Right, exactly. You ride off into the sunset, so to speak, if you wanted to. And then, but if you don't, then the sun sets, you wake up, and you begin Company of the Dragon. So it was very nice, very fulfilling, and again, thank you, Roy, for taking the time to do that, and I guess thank you, Lloyd, for making Roy do it. Wow.
Yeah. All right, Lloyd. Thanks, buddy.
Just kidding.
Love you, mean it.
Love you, mean it. So you actually in the first part of the episode, you kind of threaded the needle, so to speak, into a wonderful time that you had with your granddaughter. And why don't you give us a bit more details on that con at that library that you did, and maybe a game that you guys played?
Yeah, so I took my granddaughter to her first game convention, as I said in the opening segment, and there's a little library con called Shush Con. There's the play on words here. Shh. It's at a library, right? So called Shush Con, and we got the opportunity to play Magical Kitties Save the Day, 2nd edition, and I knew it was a game that she was interested in. She convinced me to buy it about, 8 or 10 months ago, maybe a year ago now. I bought it from the local game store. I read it. I thought it was brilliantly written, presented. I reviewed it on my blog, and now it sits on my shelf.
Yeah.
Because I read books, I move on to something else. I just never got back to running it for her because she willy-nilly stays here, doesn't stay here, stays here, doesn't stay here kind of thing.
Right.
And when I saw this on the schedule, I immediately called her at her dad's house and I said, hey, do you want to play? There's open seats. I can schedule us for this. And she was like, absolutely, I want to play this. So yeah, pretty much, 12-year-old. So I love kitties. So I signed her up. I signed myself up, and we played. There was 8 players, and she was not the youngest. There was 2 young girls, probably 7-ish, 8-ish, her at 12, and then the other 5 players were all adults.
Right.
And I was the only one there with a kid. Everybody else was there just to play as adults. And it was a 2-hour story, 2-hour scenario by not a published one. It was from the mind of the game master.
Cool.
It was a brilliant little story, super simple mechanics. The whole premise is cats can do crazy magical things, and you can do these things, but you can't let humans, 99.99% of humans, see you do them. So you have to be very discreet on what it is you are doing.
Right.
Or you have to make it look like it's a natural occurrence that you're, elevating yourself and floating, or maybe but it's perceived as you're bouncing, you're almost like parkouring, that kind of thing.
Right.
Although it's a magic, this kind of thing.
But
there are humans that can see cats, can talk to cats, but there are very few and far in between.
Yeah.
And we had to save a woman that we kind of worked with.
Mm-hmm.
This game master had some crazy ideas. She was a woman who brokered in Pokemon. He mixed a lot of genres.
Okay.
And IPs, and like she brokered in Pokemon, and so she got herself in all kinds of trouble with the Fae and the fairy realm, and this whole big story was going on. But it was a super simple story, and we had a great time, super interactive. The kids had a great time. The adults, we all got super into it. And surprisingly, for a game marketed toward a very younger crowd,
right? If
we pulled like the 2 youngest kids out, and probably, starting at, 10, 12, 13-year-old and go up, especially adults with some beers, this would be a bloody wonderful game.
Awesome.
You could do some crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And all have a great time.
It got me thinking when you were describing it, suddenly, because you're talking about how kitties, have to have keep their existence away from humanity. Suddenly I'm thinking, okay, so the adult version is Feline the Masquerade.
Kind of.
So,
yeah.
But no, that's cool, and I'm glad she had a good time. And as
and she did.
As mentioned earlier, you're creating a monster. She's going to drag your old ass to many cons, so get ready for that. So, but that.
Oh, I know she will, but I'm going to do it with a smile on my face
in a good way. So,
yep.
So you also had another event. This was an online event. You were lucky enough to join in with the good friends of Jackson Elias Online Con and play a game or two. So how did that go?
So I got 3 games in over the course of 2 days because I had a family obligation, also known as my wife's birthday, a couple weekends back, and had some obligations I was committed to for that. But in the 2 days leading up to that, I was able to squeeze in 3 games. But
okay.
Swords of the Serpentine, the Gumshoe game. Jury's still out on this one. I don't know how I feel about it. I do like Gumshoe. Not sure I like that scenario, but it was interesting. Okay. But I'm still not sure how I feel about Gumshoe and fantasy. Got to play it some more. Got to do some more reading.
Got it.
Not going to comment any more on it.
Okay.
Played Troublemakers. It's on itch.io. It's a PBTA game. Basically, it's the playset we used. The game designer was running it. Basically, the playset was like inspired by the TV show Wednesday.
Okay.
So kind of like Monster Hunters, spin-off of like Monster Hunter, kind of PBTA, Monster of the Week kind of game.
Okay.
Interesting. Kind of felt like
been there,
any
done
other
that.
Monster Hunter game.
Yeah. Kind of a rehash of something that already exists for the same system.
Felt very vanilla. Mechanic-wise, felt very vanilla, but the kind of Wednesday theme to it was different. So that was okay.
Okay.
Meh. I mean, I wouldn't go buy it. Not to say it was a bad game. I'm just not going to go drop $15 for a PDF. That's all I'll say.
Got it.
And then, now the game master, the game designer that was running it, did a brilliant job. He's a great storyteller. We all had a great time, and it was fun.
Right.
I just felt it was very meh for me as a game, as a whole.
Okay.
But the one game I did play that I was actually a standby player and was able to get a seat in, and I was super excited. It was probably the most desired game I wanted to play in the entire event was Zhangxi or Zheng. I can't pronounce it, but I say Zhangxi.
That's fine.
I know I'm saying it incorrectly, but Blood in the Banquet Hall.
Yes.
It's a boxed role-playing game. It's kind of it has board game elements.
Yes.
But it's purely a role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
It was played through Discord. The individual that ran it, she did a brilliant job. All the information was in various Discord chat channels that we could look up. The story was great. Mechanics are a little weird to get a hold of, wrap your head around. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around them. And I own the game, but I haven't read it. I need to sit down and really deep dive into it, like everything else I own.
Yeah.
It was a great play experience.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of, I want to say world building. It's world building in any other game, but this was restaurant building and family building.
Yeah.
And we were all part of the same family, and we had to build our family in terms of we were all the players. They were pre-gens of sorts, but one was the grandfather, one was the father, one was the daughter, the son. We were all interconnected, generational.
Yep.
And we had to build our restaurant. What were we famous for? What was our signature dish? Where in New York's Chinatown were we located? When did we start business? These things don't seem important, but they help establish comfort between the players and building fiction together, first and foremost, right? That whole forming of a group kind of thing in the beginning. And then it allowed us to then start building off of that. And then all of a sudden, she was bringing in the fiction into it before we even realized it. All of a sudden, the game's moving along, and we thought we were still world building, and we're playing the game.
Oh, okay.
And it was, the greengrocer daughter brings in deliveries, and all of a sudden we're like, and we just thought it was part of the world building, but no, that was like the hook into the story, and it was so cleanly done, and she did a brilliant job.
Very cool, very cool. So it sounds interesting. I've been kind of hovering around that for some time now, and it definitely was one that I almost picked up. It is a pricey one, just for you listeners who aren't aware of it. The box set retails for about $80, I think, approximately.
I think 75-ish.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff inside. But there is like so many things. You just kind of need the one person like you to say, yeah, this might be worth checking out. And it does sound like it would be one to do. Technically a campaign of, because to get the full breadth of what the game is like.
Yeah, it does have the elements of playing, we played one day's worth, but there are things that if you were playing multiple days worth of a campaign or a story, there are things that happen day to day, because you are playing it's the morning time in preparation at the restaurant, because you are restaurateurs by day in your Chinese family restaurant, and you are hopping vampire hunters by night.
Right.
So
I think it's one also that may actually have an ending within it. I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up to verify that, but I think it's
our story did. It had demon.
Yeah.
It had a demon. It had a hopping vampire. It had a comet. It had some great elements that all worked out really well.
Right.
It was great.
So cool. Well, sounds like that was a lot of fun and very, very rewarding and enlightening. So, but
what have you been doing that's fun? I've been having lots of fun. Have you?
So I've got a couple more to touch on. So, I am continuing on with Nightmare of a Ragged Hollow, which is a game designed for old school essentials. And I'm running it with my local group at the game store with my friend who owns the store. And it has crested the hill as far as their acceptance with old school essentials. It was a bit bumpy in the beginning because this is not 5e, and the one that had the most the oldest one that one of the players had the most experience with was 3.5. So this was definitely a game changer for them. But they found their groove, again, the old school style of, kind of more like rulings instead of rules, not relying on skills. You need to kind of improv. Don't play with your character sheet, but just, decide you want to do something, and then we'll figure it out and see if you can or not. They've gotten to that groove, and it's been very rewarding to kind of see that with them. The adventure itself is a great scenario. It definitely touches on the various, not gonzo, but kind of like the weird, more folklore-y, kind of fairy tale-ish fantasy aspects that some of the old school essential modules lean towards. It's got a bit of humor with it, but it's also can be dark and disturbing. The only thing that that we're running into issues with is and a minor spoiler to this game, but there's horrific aspects to it. Visionary details, body horror, things like that can occur randomly based upon the situation that's occurring around Ragged Hollow. And one thing they're all seasoned Call of Cthulhu players. So when these things occur, they're like waiting for, are we losing sanity or anything? And I'm just like, well, how
they're looking for familiar territory,
right? I'm like, well, how does your character feel about it? So they're kind of getting into that aspect. There's no mechanic with it, but is your dwarf cleric or dwarf this is old school essential. So is your dwarf scared of what they see? It's like, well, I think he would be. So they're getting into that. They're getting into the more role playing aspect of it. The adventure is very cool. I would recommend anyone who's a fan of old school essentials. This would be one that I would pick up right away and recommend. But going to be playing another game of it tonight and looking forward to it. So it's also a great introductory adventure. So if you are new to old school essentials and you're looking for one to pick up and run with, it does have a little bit of hand holding in regards to GM aspects to it. So if you're not familiar with old school essentials, you're not diving into this adventure blindly. There's a lot of references and cross references between it and whatnot. It's light enough and easy enough to run that by the time they're done, they should easily be level 2, maybe close to level 3, depending on their character by the time they're done. So and the big highlight is the Hyperborea game that I have been a player in for, I think almost 3 years now, run by the wonderful and stupendous Andy Markham. We hit session 100 the other day.
Holy Jesus.
400 plus hours in the world of Hyperborea. And now, not with the same character, mind you, because Hyperborea is extremely deadly.
Chews them up and spits them out?
Right. I think I'm on my 4th, but we're all about levels between level 7 to level 9. And I believe there's 1 or 2 that have actually been around since day 1 that have survived. So it is a fantastic game. It is a wonderful old school game. The Hyperborea is kind of like, I would kind of call it a touched up, cleaned up first edition / second edition AD&D, and
hybrid of the two.
Exactly. And but it's it's got similar mechanics to that, and but of course it isn't just Hyperborea itself. It's just the cast of guys that, I shouldn't say cast, the group of guys, because we're not streaming or anything, but the entire group that I've been playing with are all fantastic, wonderful people. They're all experienced gamers, and it has been nothing but a delight to be playing with them over the years. And that's what makes it more special than just the fact that we hit 100, that the group has retained the same attendance from day 1. And we keep rolling along. That's
impressive.
Yeah, we keep rolling along.
So are you guys is the intent to continue on, or to kind of put a bow on it here at this amazing milestone and then move on to something else?
So we've done palate cleansers before. Like one time we took a break and Andy rolled us through Isle of Dread, or part of it. Then we got back into Hyperborea. So it's kind of on the fence. I think Andy might be kind of done with it. Some of the players may feel otherwise. I think there may be another session that might decide because of this won't spoil it all, but there's a portal that could lead somewhere unknown. And if we decide to take our characters through that portal, then we would probably be running something else with those characters. Okay. Or we may just decide, this is a nice, neat bow. These characters may either put in deep freeze if we decide to come back, maybe do a little epilogue like what happened with 6 Seasons, and move on to something else. I think Andy has He's biting at the bridle, I think, to run Purple Planet. Dungeon Crawl Classics would be great. And also, I think he wants to potentially carry on with Isle of Dread, which we were using Old School Essentials to run for that. And that's been a blast too. So, yeah, still fantasy stuff because that's his wheelhouse, and I don't have a problem with that. But wherever he decides to go, I'm more of just like, I'm happy to just be along for the ride, whereas others may have a different opinion. But I'm like, whatever we do is fine with me. Okay. So yeah, that's...
Well, sounds exciting. Wherever it goes, it sounds exciting. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no. So... Hello, Future Scott here, and for those of you who are familiar with Titterpigs, know that most of our banter is usually 99% unscripted and totally off the cuff. And because of that, this may lead to things that we may forget to mention. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention in our play report the 2 GURPS campaigns that is currently being run by our patron Pat. One is the Fantasy Age of Sail campaign and also the Twilight 2000 campaign. Both are excellent, and both have provided me a deeper appreciation for GURPS, of which I had little to no experience in when I joined. So thank you, Pat, for running these games for me, and I look forward to enjoying many, many more. So that's it. Jesus Christ. You know, we've been busy doing all sorts of stuff.
Wow, busier than I thought.
I know. You wanted to keep this about at 20 minutes. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
so
fuck that shit.
So anyways, well, there you go, man. Episode 39. I think this was a good one. How about you?
37, Scott. 37.
See, you know, we couldn't get through without having to do some sort of editing. So there we go.
I'll clean it up in post.
Here, let me help you. Episode 37. There you go. We'll put that in. Anyway.
Inside jokes, everybody.
All right.
Well, I guess that's going to wrap us up for episode 37.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. We are going to roll on out of here until we come back for episode 38, which we're going to be in the studio in another week or two to record that episode.
Yep.
And we're going to try to get these back on a regular rhythm now that Scott's in-laws have vacated the property.
Yes.
So we can get into the studio more often and get these things recorded, edited, and out to you guys. So look for episode 38 here in the near future. Mm-hmm. And with that, I think we're out of here.
Take care.
Hey, Titterpigs fam, just a quick reminder, we do have our Patreon going on. It's patreon.com/Titterpigs. You can show your support there. We have 2 tiers for you, a $3 and a $6 tier, so show us some love and be part of our growing community.
And speaking of our current community, I would like to give a shout out to our current Patreon members, Dr. Mitch, Jason Sheets, Bud's RPG Review, Dwayne Costa, William Payne, Lupus Malum, Salt Heart, Patrick Mullen, Dragon Girl 74, and our newest member, Crafty Matt Craft.